place, because
Sure.
what they fear the most is foreknowledge on the part of the public,
Yeah, yeah.
because that way they can't go back and say, oh, it was a drill, oh, no, it wasn't a drill, it was a real attack, and, who's going to believe them at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in our country, there have been so many lies coming out of Washington and out of the White House in particular, that the credibility has been damaged to the point where most people just think everything the man says is complete BS.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Yeah.
I hope that by me writing a report like this, and by you publicizing this on my behalf and with me, that we are able to play a part in preventing some of these attacks from taking place.
Sure, sure. One thing that you also brought out was the number of days it takes for an investigation to begin. I think and you lined out 5 different events. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the investigation of a commission that's impaneled by the government, like in the case of the JFK assassination, we had the Warren Commission that supposedly determined that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone nut who killed the president.
Sure.
It only took a week for them to put together the beginnings of the Warren Commission and for that to be authorized to go forward. Before that, we had the sinking of the Titanic, which only took 6 days. The Challenger shuttle disaster in the mid-'80s in the United States, again, a week. The Pearl Harbor attack, 9 days. And then we have 9/11, and it took them 441 days to put together the 9/11 Commission. And when they did that, initially they said, Henry Kissinger is going to be the chairman of this commission.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people at that point were very, very curious about what is going on here. And he was asked to reveal some of his clientele, his Kissinger and Associates consulting group that he heads. And he was unwilling to do that. And I'm sure he was unwilling to do that because of the fact that if we looked at that list of clients, we would find that many of them, if not all of them, outright, have these connections that go back to these elite circles, the round table groups, the Bilderbergs, and all of this CFR and trilaterals and so on and so on.
Sure.
And he never made the cut, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
It also could have been that he was a little bit of a test before the public just to see if they would tolerate somebody like that.
Exactly, yeah, precisely.
And I wondered if that was the case, too.
Yeah, because in some sense it's very clumsy to try to pull a thing like that off, right?
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah. Anyway, wasn't it CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, who went basically immediately after the attacks on the World Trade Center, went out and said that America could use this event to their advantage, because this was like a new Pearl Harbor, basically.
Yes, that's correct. They had continuously pointed to this as being this new century's Pearl Harbor. And what I thought was interesting about this, too, was 11th, in his presidential diary, George Bush Jr. made the following entry. America went through its second Pearl Harbor today. And so we find this connection being made between 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, which had occurred many, many times during that period.
Yeah. So moving on here in the excellent list that you outline in your article, this sudden appearance of bogus evidence occurs. Tell us about that.
This is where we have the passport that will survive the raging inferno. This is an inferno that supposedly melted all the steel in this building to the point where it collapsed. And yet here's this paper passport that just appears out of nowhere on the street. In the case of the JFK assassination, we find the sudden appearance of these backyard photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald, which were actually used to convict him in the minds of the American public. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, that I'm very good with Photoshop, I was able to take those photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald and duplicate some research that had been done by a photo analyst who had looked at this and had said that these were fabricated photos and that they actually were Lee Harvey Oswald's head on a different body. And so I duplicated that, and it did turn out that was, in fact, the case of what happened.
Sure.
Now, going back to 1963, there was no Photoshop back then, so this had to be all done by hand. And we find that these are, compared to today's type of work that can be done, are very primitive in technique, just because they were done by hand and not by computer.
Sure. Oh, that's very interesting. You know, wasn't it in regards to? I mean, returning to the fact that the video also, of course, of Osama bin Laden, where if you put these two pictures right next to each other, I think that this was from the first video when he came out and said that he was behind 9/11 and so forth, and put that next to the image of the official image of how Osama looks. And I mean, there's I think it was David Icke who said that this guy must have been to the Kandahar cream cake factory or something like that, because there's no resemblance at all between these people, and the nose was off, and his skin color was off, and all of this. I mean, it feels to me like that they are much more refined at actually doing this more in a credible way, but it's to me at least it's kind of crappy technique involved here.
It's almost like their arrogance is putting them into a position of trying to mess with our perceptions and trying to do this in an arrogant way to see if we notice,
Yeah.
Anyone who has eyes to see and a mind to think with will recognize what you had just said is absolutely the case. When you look at these two versions of Osama, 1.0 and 2.0, whatever you want to call them that.
Yeah.
But, for the sleeping masses, they're never going to get down to that level of investigation. In fact, most people believe themselves to be informed
Sure.
if they watch the news all day long, and they get all the newspapers to their house, and they read Time and Newsweek magazine, and that makes them more informed.
Sure.
Well, I think Red Ice has a better bunch of news than those people have ever done at any time during their tenure.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. In many instances, that it's not that the evidence, or at least from my point of view, that the viable questions of being asked. The people should be curious about this stuff and should be have an open mind and an open heart and be curious to know what the heck has happened and why and so forth. But in many cases, this is people are being kept, in ignorance because of the fact that they simply want to open their eyes and look around a little bit, because they, adopt the official version and they parrot that immediately. And I think that even in regards to parroting the official line, they actually feel themselves that they are more informed just in order to that they're able to repeat what the newsmen repeated, basically.
Mm-hmm. And there's also something else going on here, too, that must be mentioned, and that is in the public school systems in America, the way that children are taught is to accept everything without question, what all authority figures are telling them.
Mm.
And the earliest that they can imprint this upon a person's mind, the better for them. Because at least they know that person will not question anything that, say, another person who is paying attention would question.
Yeah.
And with that being the case, when they see these things on the news, they accept that as being another level of authority.
Sure.
They're the news authority.
Sure.
So I must listen, and this is, the official thing here, because this is the White House press conference, and gee, they wouldn't be lying to me, would they?
Exactly. And the thought of someone in that position are actually up there, in lying to you. That in itself is a scary thought that many people can't seem to accept or get over, because that would open up the box of endless possibility of what they might been duped by in regards to other things in their life and so forth, and all the events historically, and I think it on some level, on a psychological level, becomes overwhelming for a lot of people, which unfortunately makes them turn away from this completely.
Well, the other thing that I discovered when I started investigating these things is when I started talking to different people about these issues of how things are portrayed in the media and so forth, that I was told by more than half of the people that I talked to that they expect their leaders to behave in the same way they behave.
Yeah, exactly.
So they transfer their own morality upon their elected officials.
Sure.
Which, as we find out in the cases of many of these people, there were many, many scandals that were happening behind the scenes in a lot of these different presidencies, throughout our entire nation's history. And so they mistakenly believe that these individuals are going to be honest just because they are honest.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Which is a huge mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed.